March 21, 1967. Dawn breaks over War Zone C, a remote stretch of jungle in Tay Ninh Province, 90 kilometers northwest of Saigon. In a small clearing carved from the Vietnamese wilderness, 450 American soldiers are preparing for another day of an operation most of them believe is already winding down. They don't know that 2,500 Viet Cong soldiers are already surrounding them. They don't know the attack begins in 2 hours, and they don't know that the man commanding their artillery, a 44-year-old lieutenant colonel named John William Vesey Jr., is about to do something that has almost never been done in the history of warfare. By the time the sun reaches its peak, 647 enemy bodies will be counted in that clearing. The 272nd Viet Cong regiment will be shattered, and that lieutenant colonel will eventually rise to become the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest military position in America. This is the Battle of Firebase Gold. For the Viet Cong, attacking it was a fatal mistake. To understand why this battle happened, you first need to understand where it happened. War Zone C was the Viet Cong's backyard. This dense jungle province pressed against the Cambodian border was home to COSVN, the Central Office for South Vietnam, the Communist Command Center controlling all military operations across the South. American forces had spent years trying to locate it. They never could. In February 1967, the U.S. military launched Operation Junction City, the largest single operation of the entire Vietnam War. More than 30,000 troops poured into War Zone C, 22 American infantry battalions, 4 South Vietnamese battalions, 17 artillery battalions, nearly 3,000 Air Force sorties. The mission was straightforward. Find COSVN, destroy it. But here's where the Viet Cong made their first mistake. Instead of dissolving back into the jungle and waiting out the American offensive, General Nguyen Chi Thanh chose to stand and fight. While General Vo Nguyen Giap argued that attacking American firepower head-on was suicide, Thanh believed his elite units could defeat the Americans in pitched conventional battle. Firebase Gold, sitting exposed in that jungle clearing, looked like the opportunity to prove it. On March 19th, helicopters set down near the abandoned village of Soi Tre. Within hours, a firebase took shape. Foxholes around a star-shaped perimeter, barbed wire, M45 quad-mount .50 caliber machine guns, and 17 105mm howitzers. At its center stood Lieutenant Colonel John William Vesey Jr., a man who had already earned a battlefield commission at Anzio in World War II. Hidden in the surrounding jungle, the 272nd Regiment was already moving into position. The warning signs were there. They just weren't read correctly. 11 days earlier, on March 10th, Viet Cong forces had attacked Firebase Prek Clock 2. Artillery crews lowered their howitzers and fired directly into charging infantry at point-blank range. 197 Viet Cong soldiers died. American losses, 3. It should have ended all discussion about direct assaults on fortified American positions. Than's forces regrouped and planned a larger attack. On March 19th, as the first helicopters descended into Soi Tre, command-detonated explosives buried in the landing zone fired simultaneously. 3 helicopters destroyed, 6 damaged. 15 Americans killed, 28 wounded before the firebase was even operational. The enemy had been watching from the tree line the entire time. The following day, patrols spotted enemy observers at the jungle's edge. That night, listening posts reported movement in the darkness. Whispered voices, the metallic sound of weapons being handled. At 4:30 a.m. on March 21st, an ambush patrol transmitted its final radio message. Enemy movement detected. Then the radio went silent. Every man on that patrol would be killed or wounded within 2 hours. Firebase Gold now held roughly 450 men. The nearest infantry battalion was 4 kilometers away through dense bamboo jungle. The men inside the perimeter were on their own. At 6:30 a.m., the jungle erupted. More than 650 mortar rounds struck the firebase in the opening minutes. 60mm and 82mm shells walking systematically across the perimeter, collapsing bunkers, killing men where they stood. Then the infantry came. Waves of soldiers from the 272nd Regiment charged from the eastern tree line. AK-47s and RPGs firing continuously. A simultaneous feint hit the western perimeter to prevent redeployment. The 272nd had arrived equipped for fast annihilation, 50 RPG-2 rocket launchers, 30 light machine guns, nearly 2,000 stick grenades. By 7:11 a.m., 41 minutes into the attack, Company B's 1st platoon was overrun. Viet Cong fighters were inside the perimeter. F-4 Phantoms carrying napalm were called in, striking dangerously close to American positions. The attackers kept coming. By 7:50 a.m., Company B was running out of ammunition. The company commander made a desperate radio call. Artillery fired directly into his own positions. The enemy was that close. By 8:25 a.m., the northern perimeter was breached. A quad .50 gun crew destroyed their own weapon with thermite grenades rather than surrender it. Viet Cong soldiers were now 15 meters from the howitzers, 5 meters from the aid station where wounded Americans lay. This is where the Viet Cong's gamble turned into catastrophe. 14 of the Firebase's 17 howitzers had been damaged in the mortar barrage. Vesey moved to the gun line under fire, rallying crews, directing repairs, organizing men through smoke and explosions. Within minutes, all but 3 guns were back in action. Then he gave the order, fire beehive rounds point blank. The M546 APT beehive round contained 8,000 steel flechettes, thin, dart-shaped projectiles spreading in a lethal cone upon detonation. Standard procedure called for timed fuses at distance. Vesey's crews disabled the timers and lowered the barrels almost flat to the ground. The enemy was 75 meters away, then 50. In some positions, 15 meters. The guns fired. Veterans described finding bodies stacked 3 and 4 deep in the foxholes, rank after rank cut down by flechettes traveling at nearly 1,000 meters per second. When beehive ammunition ran out, the crews loaded high explosive rounds and kept firing horizontally into charging infantry. By battle's end, Vesey's battalion had expended more than 2,000 artillery rounds at point-blank range. For those actions, Vesey received the Distinguished Service Cross. Paige Lanier, a munitions officer who personally resupplied the guns with over 2,000 rounds during the battle, described the day more than 50 years later at a memorial ceremony. We look at it as a memorial service. It's not something to really celebrate. We all feel very much for our soldiers that we lost. Help was already moving. At 6:40 a.m., 10 minutes after the attack began, Colonel Marshall Garth ordered every available unit toward Firebase Gold. Lieutenant Colonel Joe Elliott reversed his battalion and pushed 4 kilometers back through jungle under sniper fire and mortar bombardment, treating wounded on the march without stopping. To the south, an armored column had been blocked by a river crossing for 24 hours. When the attack began, they found their solution. They sank an armored personnel carrier into the riverbed and drove the M48 Patton tanks over it. At 9 a.m., relief infantry burst through the tree line. At 9:12 a.m., armor crashed through the jungle from the southwest, .50 caliber machine guns and 90mm canister rounds sweeping the flanks of the Viet Cong force. The attackers were now trapped between incoming armor and beehive fire from inside the firebase. By 9:30 a.m., the perimeter was secured. By 11:45, the battle was over. The aftermath was staggering. American forces counted 647 Viet Cong bodies. Intelligence estimated 200 more had been carried away. Captured: 50 RPG-2 launchers, 30 light machine guns, 49 AK-47s, 31,000 rounds of ammunition, nearly 2,000 grenades. American losses: 31 killed, 187 wounded. The kill ratio exceeded 20-1. So why was attacking Firebase Gold a fatal mistake? 3 reasons. First, the tactical failure. The Viet Cong underestimated what artillery could do at close range. 17 howitzers firing beehive rounds turned the firebase into a killing ground. The plan assumed a fast overrun followed by an ambush of the relief column. Instead, the relief column broke through and the attacking force was destroyed between 2 fires. Second, they ignored their own evidence. 11 days earlier at Prek Clock 2, they had watched American crews fire howitzers directly into charging infantry. 197 dead. At Firebase Gold, they repeated the same assault with a larger force. Same tactics, same result. only worse. Third, they delivered exactly the battle American commanders wanted. Westmoreland's entire strategy depended on drawing enemy forces into engagements where American firepower achieved lopsided casualty ratios. Firebase Gold was that strategy working as designed. The deepest damage was strategic. The destruction of the 272nd Regiment and other elite Southern Viet Cong units throughout 1967 forced a fundamental shift in communist thinking. Thon recognized that direct assaults on American firebases were unsurvivable. His answer: attack the cities instead. Within months of Suoi Tre, COSVN, began planning what would become the Tet Offensive of January 1968, the assault that shocked American public opinion and changed the course of the war. John Vesey kept rising. In 1982, President Ronald Reagan appointed him the 10th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He remains the only draftee in American history to reach that office. The Battle of Firebase Gold lasted less than 6 hours. For the men who fought there, and for the history of the Vietnam War, its consequences lasted far longer. On March 21, 1967, 2,500 Viet Cong soldiers attacked 450 Americans in a jungle clearing. It was a fatal mistake.